practiced in the corporate sector, but she didn't like to talk of work or even think about work when her time was her own. "My concern is billable," she'd proclaim when asked about some matter she'd left at the office. "If I'm not being paid, I just don't care." But she'd married a man who cared all the time. Hugh Lamond was the doctor. Not just a doctor, but the doctor. Ashwood was not large enough or gentrified enough to have more than the doctor, and Hugh Lamond was it. Every man, woman, and child in Ashwood knew who he was and assumed he cared about each small twinge or ache or concern, regardless of whether it was his anniversary or his wife's birthday. They were right. In the beginning, Madeleine had thought it funny, the godlike status of the country doctor, and Hugh was, after all, charming and committed. If anyone deserved to be a small-town god, it was him. Now it niggled just a little that she had been lost in his divine glory, a handmaiden to his social deity. But still, she was proud of him. So Madeleine worked, commuting when she had to, and advising from home when she could. During her non-billable hours, she painted and sewed and built a garden that would grow to be worthy of the grand home they would have, whenever they finally got around to renovating. And then one day, while sitting in a particularly tedious meeting about some technical matter for which a lawyer's presence was merely decorative, Madeleine de Lyon had an idea for a story, and the very first thought of him. The moment of genesis was strong, a cell of creativity that divided and multiplied until there was life. He had barely any substance at all, just a space in the narrative for a protagonist of some sort. She began writing then and there, raising her head occasionally to nod so her colleagues would think she was taking notes about the meeting itself. Every now and then she would arch a brow and shake her head, or rub her chin while frowning, or tap the table with her lips pressed tightly together. She called it her boardroom technique, the kind of lawyerly intimations of consideration that made people feel better regardless. It was Madeleine's conviction that her clients demanded the presence of their lawyers at these meetings, not because they needed them or even planned to listen to them, but because the legal profession was a kind of security blanket. She was paid for what she called corporate hand-holding, and the nature of Madeleine was such that she was not too proud to admit it. In that meeting, she discovered just one thing about him. But oh, what a thing! What a perfect link! He was a writer. It was their connection. He would see the world as she did, in stories or potential stories, in vignettes and themes. He would judge people as characters, each with their own story. They would look upon his world together. She called him Edward McGinnity. His friends would call him Ned. He was 28 when she found him, a young man with the world at his feet and no idea of how he should step into it. Edward McGinnity had always known he would write. It was as natural to him as breathing, and he suspected the consequences of stopping would be as dire. In his mind, there had always been epics, tales that carried on the books he could not bear to end, and new stories with conglomerate characters and modified plots. Eventually, he'd picked up a pen. At first, he'd written poetry as adolescents do, learned to weave words with angst and defiance and heartbreak. Those old verses embarrassed him now, melodramatic, flowery, pretentious. But every so often, there was one line, one phrase that was clear and strong and perfect. As he grew into a man, Edward McGinnity learned to pull back, to leave the louder things unsaid, to call out to the whispers once drowned in waves of passionate literary excess. And he found new stories and a desire to be read. Maintained by an inheritance,